So, the BattleBit developers have been busy little beavers lately. We've obviously been focusing heavily lately on the introduction of transport helicopters to the game, but we aren't stopping there, ladies and gentlemen. A week ago, armed Littlebirds were introduced to the game, the first quote-unquote attack aircraft to make their debut in BattleBit Remastered, which begs the question, how do they play, and are they well balanced? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we are talking about the armed Littlebirds in BattleBit Remastered and the precedents that this sets going forward. So, we've had the armed Littlebirds in BattleBit for about a week now. I get it, I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, but in my defense, BattleBit runs these playtests at midnight on a Saturday night for me. And yeah, look, quite frankly, I've got no excuse other than I was out getting plastered the night that these Littlebirds were introduced. So yeah, sorry about that, lads. But nonetheless, I have since had an ample opportunity to give these things a spin in the game now, and form some views on them. And I've just got to say, right out front here, at the risk of sounding like an echo chamber from our recent coverage talking about the transport helicopters, hot damn, did I have some serious fun with these attack Littlebirds. They felt really agile, sometimes too agile, but more on that shortly. They felt like they had a quote-unquote fitting amount of health points backing them with that said mobility, and of course, firing the miniguns on these things was nothing short of an absolute blast. Firing the minigun out the door gun of a transport helicopter was already something satisfying enough. But now you're telling me I can fire two of them at once? Oh, it's only February and I already feel like Christmas has come early. Scoring a successful gun run with these things took me straight back to the Battlefield 3 and 4 days of yesteryear, and the experience was nothing short of incredible. I would even say nostalgic in a way. Now, I mentioned the Battlefield 3 and 4 days quite deliberately here as a comparison, but I'll get to that in a second as to why we've done so. I firstly want to address something that I've heard a few times in my streams or in the comments of previous videos regarding these helicopters in BattleBit Remastered. More specifically, concerns about their application to the game and how it may hurt the overall experience of BattleBit, especially from an infantry player's perspective. Because I've got to be honest here, when I too heard that we would be first seeing attack helicopters added to the game really soon, I had some pretty serious reservations myself. I've played many a first-person shooter in my time, and in a lot of circumstances where aircraft of an offensive nature are present in the game, we can see some pretty frustrating experiences in play as well. Focusing on the aircraft in isolation, a lot of these games will often give said aircraft weapons with splash damage or an area of effect damage type that allows the pilot or the gunner, if a gunner is applicable, to not necessarily need to hit a target directly and still get the job done. You're able to sort of shoot around where a target is and still score enough damage to score kills. Those of you who have been with my channel for a while may be familiar with PlanetSide 2 and the air-to-ground experience that that game has on offer. Aircraft can be outfitted with crazy weaponry that can just carpet bomb areas with obscene damage, sometimes killing an infantry in less than a second or even in one shot with said weapon. If implemented incorrectly, attack aircraft and air-to-ground weaponry can be extremely disruptive to the gameplay flow for everyone else. I get they're meant to have an impact, but at the same time there's having an impact and then being absurdly disruptive. Some games definitely creep into that imbalance when they add offensive aircraft. But looking beyond that fact, BattleBit Remastered has yet to introduce proper ground-to-air weaponry for infantry, or even vehicles for that matter. Sure, small arms fire will damage helicopters in this game right now, but the only way to really make a helicopter think twice about hanging around is to score a hit on it with an unguided RPG. It's no easy feat. It feels amazing when you do it, but shit, it ain't easy. So seeing the developers choosing to add attack aircraft without adding traditional counters to them, such as a mobile AA tank or even ground-to-air lock-on launchers, I was concerned that this addition would be slightly premature. However, it is worth noting that attack aircraft can be done right, and I think that comes down to a very important baseline design decision, that being focusing on rewarding skilled play over ease of use, giving a vehicle that capacity to perform well and be quite a force multiplier on the battlefield, but only in the hands of a player with the skills to reach said capacity. And one of the simplest ways you can achieve this focus is by giving your said vehicles the kind of weapons that require accuracy and precision from the user. Demanding precision despite you being in a larger, easier to target vehicle that is going to cop a lot of fire and also needs to be controlled by the pilot at the same time. Yes, you have very powerful weapons on your vehicle, but can you operate said weapons in a high pressure environment that sees you taking more fire? That should be what dictates your victory. And to loop back a little bit here, the perfect example of this being done right to me in the past is actually with the Littlebirds of Battlefield 4 and the balancing around their, say, stock miniguns. Sure, they were insanely punishing to be on the receiving end of, but they also required precision to use effectively. If someone was demolishing a lobby with a Littlebird and some miniguns, they needed to be a good pilot, have total mastery over the helicopter's flight model, and then also translate their FPS skills, such as crosshair placement, all that stuff, into the equation as well. It meant that the miniguns were insanely effective, but they weren't a no-brainer to use. You couldn't just point, click, and delete all of the ants below. You needed to be rather skillful to do it. And BattleBit Remastered has understood this problem perfectly. And these Littlebird helicopters that have been added to the game as a result are an incredibly mature approach to introduce some more flavor to the air game of BattleBit. My time with the Littlebirds so far in this game only cements that fact. The miniguns feel incredibly good when you can aim with them right, deadly enough to get some serious work done, don't get me wrong, but they aren't going to do any of the work for you in advance. There is no splash damage here, there is no aim assist here, there is no assistive technology of any kind here. You have to do all of the work to make these very powerful miniguns come to you, and combine that firepower with a very agile airframe, and you can perform some satisfying maneuvers. There were a few times where I caught myself, let's just say, tensing up in some places, only to let out a massive sigh of relief after achieving said maneuver. Seriously, top tier stuff, a lot of fun to pull off, but there were also plenty of times where I and other pilots that I was engaging flew a little bit too close to the sun, and even with the lack of lock-on weaponry in the game, dumb positioning or getting far too greedy would quickly see my time cut short in these aircraft. The dumbfired heat RPG rounds, which have stellar amount of muzzle velocity behind them, are able to one-shot these attack Littlebirds straight out of the sky if you get it. Small arms fire was also a serious threat here as well, and that even goes as far as to saying that you could get shot directly out of the cockpit here, or you can get hit hard enough to have some bleeding damage that would force you to land and bandage before you bled out. So I never really felt quote-unquote too comfortable in flying these helicopters despite the lack of lock-on dedicated AA weaponry. I sure felt like I was able to dish out enough damage to get the jobs done, but I was far from immune. I felt far from safe flying these things. And given that these helicopters are on a 3-minute respawn timer, and only one was available per team in most maps, it really added some weight to make sure that you weren't being too dumb with them, because chances are you weren't getting them back for a while. I did, however, take one issue with how they played in my testing so far. Remember how at the start of the video I mentioned that these helicopters were at times too nimble? Well, currently the yaw inputs, which are primarily bound to your A and D keys, are incredibly sensitive. So much so that it is basically impossible to do any kind of small corrections to your aim when you're engaging targets. More often than not, you'll completely overshoot the target and just sort of catch yourself spraying the target down by hosing them left to right until you get enough hits to get the kill, which I'm sure you guys have seen me do plenty of times in this gameplay already. So noting that, and noting the amount of precision these miniguns need in order to get kills, I feel like the yaw sensitivity needs to be reduced just ever so slightly to make the Littlebirds just that little bit more consistent to use in game. It'll allow for players to really hone in their aim a little bit more while piloting these things, and become more efficient in using the helicopters. Right now, I definitely felt like I was fighting the controls at times, which only added some unnecessary frustration to the experience, in my opinion. It does mean that the miniguns may inconsequently become more effective and more accurate and more deadly, but I feel like if that were to occur, balancing the miniguns themselves is a more elegant solution rather than, having the flight model in its entirety be a frustrating experience. Beyond that though, I think we've made a really good start here with the integration of the first attack aircraft into BattleBit Remastered. Yes, there is of course still some work to be done here, but I can only imagine that the developers are planning to continue to expand the flavor of the air game. I'm imagining we'll see full-blown attack helicopters come to the game at some point as well. Hell, maybe even jet fighters will make an appearance at some point too. But what this update has done for me personally has sort of set a precedence, right? The BattleBit Remastered developers have shown maturity in balancing aircraft and balancing attack aircraft nonetheless around their game. To me, they've shown that they are capable of avoiding some unnecessary frustration from an infantry player's perspective, all the while adding the combined arms nature and combined arms experiences for vehicle players to well and truly enjoy as well. It adds another layer of depth to the game without muddying the experience elsewhere, and I'm hoping that the developers can keep up this track record as they continue to add more and more features to this little game. But on that note, I now want to hear what your guys' thoughts are of the BattleBit Remastered Scout attack helicopters. Are you enjoying the integration of Littlebirds, or do you think they are unnecessary addition to the game? Leave some thoughts in the comment section down below. If you got this far, you clearly enjoyed the video, so do us a favor and hit that like button. It does go a long way to supporting the channel. And if you're new here, well, consider subscribing while you're at it, guys. Lots of new content on the way, and I'm sure you're going to want to see it going forward. And hey, say you want to support me and my content further, consider hitting that join button down below, guys, as it does go a long way to supporting the channel just that little bit extra monetarily. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.